Let's begin. At the conclusion of this presentation, you will be able to identify the new history templates, explain the difference between using the default history and specific history note templates, locate the new history note button, list the new and updated history dot and insert codes, list the new history letter codes, describe the new signature requirement for the history tab, identify the special features related to the history tab, explain the new capabilities of WebView as they relate to history notes, and finally, demonstrate documenting a family history note in a structured format. History tabs in Practice Partner 11.0 now allow for multiple notes in the past medical history, family history, and social history sections of a patient's chart. Previously, only one note was allowed for each of these tabs. As an example, for practices with multiple providers with varying specialties, they will now be able to create their own unique history notes and not be required to share the same history notes. For instance, a practice will now be able to have a default family history note, as well as a cardiology family history note template and a neurology family history note. History notes can now have their own unique title. They can also be accessed and updated from within a shared progress note. When a patient's chart is open, new options have been added for inserting history notes. A user now has the ability to select from the default history note for past medical, social, or family history, or to select from a unique list of notes. To select these options, open a patient's chart. Click on one of the history tabs, social, family, or past medical history. From the File menu, click on Insert, and then select History, and then select the desired history option. Finally, you will be presented with the options of displaying the default note or a list of previously saved notes. New buttons have been added to each of the history note templates. Clicking on the Newer button will bring up the next history note. In this slide, it would be the past medical history note, whereas clicking on the Older button will bring to view the previous or older history note. Next, we are going to examine enhancements that have been made to the history sections. First, the default past medical history, family history, and social history templates will now display as the first entry in their respective chart tab sections. Along with this enhancement, additional note templates such as specialty past medical history templates will be stored on the following new screens and will be available when you manually create a new note in past medical history, family history, or social history, or create a progress note. As we saw earlier, multiple history templates can be created by specialty or for any other reason. Let's take a look at an actual history template screen. Just like when creating any note template in Practice Partner, we will be accessing this from the Maintenance Template File menu. However, now within each of the history template areas, a user will see the addition of a lookup screen where additional history templates can be added for each of the history tabs, past medical, social, and family history. Previously, a user only had the ability to modify one history template for each of the respective history tabs. Now, a user can create multiple history templates for each of the tabs, thus making them unique for their area of specialty. The screen shown on this slide replaces the past medical history template screen. Just as in the previous slide, this screen replaces the family history template screen as accessed from the Maintenance, Template, History, Family History File menu. And finally, this screen replaces the Social History template screen as accessed from the Maintenance, Template, History, Social History File menu. Once unique history templates have been built, they can then be accessed from within a patient's History tab for documentation purposes, just as we saw earlier. Next, we will look at some of the insert codes that have been updated for Release 11.0. In this release of Practice Partner, the IPH, ISH, and IFH dot codes have been updated to insert the most recent note from the corresponding chart section along with a matching note title. For instance, entering IPH: cardiology history in a note will insert the most recent note in the past medical history chart tab titled Cardiology History into the note. A description of each of these dot codes is provided in the table that is pictured here on this slide. Also related to the updates for insert codes, enhancements have been made that impact legacy data and default titles. The default note titles in Practice Partner include past medical history, family history, and social history. When using the IPH, ISH, and IFH dot codes in a note template without using a title parameter after these codes, the dot code will automatically insert the most recent note with the default note title. For example, if a chart contains a legacy past medical history note and an additional note with a different title, then using the IPH dot code in a note without a title parameter will insert the legacy past medical history note. If a chart contains a legacy past medical history note and another note in the past medical history chart section titled cardiology history, then using the IPH dot code in a note without a title parameter will insert the legacy past medical history note. And finally, if a chart contains a legacy past medical history note, a note titled cardiology history, and a more recent note titled past medical history, then using the IPH dot code in a note without a title parameter will insert the most recent note titled past medical history. There have also been a number of new and updated insert codes related to the history section of the chart. The table shown here summarizes these new and updated codes and gives a brief explanation of what each one does. Basically, the IKS, IKP, and IKF history insert codes will insert into a progress note a particular note from the current patient's social, family, or past medical history tabs. Beginning with version 11.0, since you can have multiple notes within each of these tabs, these new insert codes will allow you to identify the specific title of the note within the respective history tab. The syntax to be followed is the following. For example, for the social history insert code of IKS, enter the IKS insert code. After the colon for the dot code, insert the specific history note title. If no history note title is entered after the IKS insert code, then Practice Partner will assume that the default history note template should be inserted into the progress note. After the system inserts the history note into the progress note, it is editable. When the progress note is saved, the system will create a new note within the relevant history tab with the new history information recorded in the progress note. Shown on this slide is information related to the IKF dot code, which is used for family history. Similar to the previous slide for social history, the information shown here identifies the syntax that should be used for this dot code. And lastly, this slide provides information related to the IKP dot code, which is used for past medical history. Once again, the information shown here identifies the syntax that should be used for this dot code. It should be noted that all of the codes shown here and on the previous two slides are using the existing K dot code to identify the history tab and coupling it with the T dot code to designate the history note title. So, let's summarize for a moment. While some of these insert codes seem similar, they all have their own distinct purpose. Existing insert codes, such as IPH, ISH, and IFH, have been updated to include a parameter for note titles, given that Practice Partner's history tabs can now have multiple notes within each tab. While the new insert codes of IKP, IKS, and IKF are used to bring in history notes, they also have the added capability to push back content added from the progress note, much like we saw with the patient instructions in version 9.5 by use of the K code.
None of the addresses are right.
Also related to the updated insert codes, a change has been made to the checkbox option called Show dot codes and label markers when adding or editing notes, located on the Records 2 tab of the Special Features screen. Now, when this option is selected and a user inserts a history note into a patient's progress note, the following dot codes now display. The IKF dot code to insert a family history note, the IKP dot code to insert a past medical history note, and the IKS dot code to insert a social history note. Another update to dot codes in Practice Partner involves the K and T dot codes. As of Release 11.0, the K dot code can be used to indicate the note's chart tab or section and can now be used in conjunction with the T dot code to assign a title to the note. In the example of the syntax shown here on this slide, the system will create a note with the title Pap smear in the pathology section in the chart, and will indicate in the text of the note that the Pap smear was negative. In regard to the T dot code, in Release 11.0 it can be used to enter the title of a note. Although it can be used multiple times in a note, it should always follow a D dot code line or a K dot code line.
Is that different? Did they have a T code in there before?
In the upcoming slides, we will review enhancements related to signature requirements as it relates to the history tabs. Some important things to note in regard to these enhancements are the following. First, as of Release 11.0, using the K. code for advanced directives requires documentation that the advanced directives were reviewed. A new ppart.ini setting, which will be further described on an upcoming slide, can be used to indicate whether embedded notes inherit signatures from their parent note for past medical history, social history, and family history notes. New checkbox options on the Signature tab of the PR Utils electronic security screen can be used to indicate whether a signature is required on history notes. And lastly, if a progress note with multiple providers has an embedded K. code line, all providers who need to sign the note only need to sign the progress note, not the K. code line. The second signing provider's signature goes to the same chart tab as the K. code line. Shown here on this slide is the Signature tab on the PR Utils electronic security screen. As indicated on the previous slide, several new checkboxes, past medical history, social history, and family history, have been added to this screen to indicate whether a signature is required for the history notes. By default, these checkbox options will not be selected. In the ppart.ini file, a new setting called K-code inherit signature can be used to indicate whether embedded notes inherit signatures from their parent note for new past medical, social, and family history notes. By default, this new setting is set to off. For more information, see the Practice Partner Upgrade and Configuration Guide. On this slide, we explain how the prior signature settings work together. Here are some examples to aid in the understanding of this concept. Example 1. If the PR Utils electronic signature for family history notes box is checked, and the K-code inherit signature setting in the ppart.ini file is set to on, then the note created from the K-code will inherit the signature of the original note. Example 2. If the PR Utils electronic signature for family history notes box is checked, and the K-code inherit signature setting in the ppart.ini file is set to off, then the note created from the K-code will be sent to the provider's review bin. Example 3. If the PR Utils electronic signature for family history notes box is not checked, and the K-code inherit signature setting in the ppart.ini file is set to on, then the note created from the K-code will inherit the signature of the original note. And finally, example 4. If the PR Utils electronic signature for family history notes box is not checked, and the K-code inherit signature setting in the ppart.ini file is set to off, then the note created from the K-code will be added to the appropriate chart section without a signature. Another history-related enhancement involves a change on the Records 2 tab of the Special Features screen. In Release 11.0, the checkbox titled When Appending or Editing History Sections, change the date line to the current date and time has been removed from this tab. Additional updated functionality as it relates to WebView is included in version 11.0. WebView will now display multiple pages of past medical, family, and social history notes. When multiple pages of notes exist, then the following display options will be available. An items per page option, which will give the patient the option to select from a drop-down list of how many items to display per page. A sort by option, which will indicate whether you want the system to sort the history notes from oldest to newest, or vice versa from newest to oldest. And finally, a page of pages with forward and back arrows option, which, when clicked on, will move the patient forward or back within the history notes. In this section of the presentation, we are going to examine the new Structured Family History feature that has been added to Release 11.0. Included in this section will be an examination of creating a family history note in a structured format, Structured Family History Special Features, Structured Family History New Letter Codes, Structured Family History New Insert Codes, and finally, Structured Family History New Dot Codes. As a requirement for Meaningful Use Stage 2, family history must be entered as structured or discrete data. Practice Partner 11 now allows you to choose between entering data in a grid format or in text or note-based format, which can be converted into a grid format. The setting that controls this view is under Special Features. This structured data can also include the linking to SNOMED codes. Shown here is the Records 5 tab of the Special Features screen. In the lower portion of this tab is a new field called Family History View. The drop-down list for this field can be used to control whether to view family history in a note format or to provide the grid button from inside the note to enter family history in a structured format. Now let's see how family history information can actually be viewed in a grid format. To begin, the Family History tab must be selected in a chart. If a default note exists, it will appear on the screen. Clicking on the grid button will open the note in a grid format in order to enter family history data. Inside the Family History grid screen, a user can add, edit, and delete family history as structured data, including SNOMED codes, add problems for individual family members, add negative family history, and they can view any associated note-based history. Data entered can be modified later or deleted if no longer relevant. Also notice that there is the option to identify whether the patient is adopted by selecting the checkbox located in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. If the New button was chosen on the New Structured Data screen, as shown on the previous slide, the Family Member New screen will appear as seen here on this slide. From here, a user can select a family member from the drop-down list and then enter name, status, date of birth, and any notes that are deemed necessary. Once this has been done, if the family member has no significant medical history to document, then the No Sig Med History button at the bottom of the screen can be selected, and if a problem needs to be entered for the family member, the Add a Problem button can be selected. If a user selects the Add a Problem button on the family member screen, the Family History Problem screen will appear as shown here on this slide. From here, a user can enter the specific details of the problem. For example, entering a problem of hypertension in the problem field and clicking the Lookup button will present the user with the Diagnosis Code Select screen from which an HLI database search can be performed to locate all of the ICD-9, ICD-10, and SNOMED codes related to the problem. A user can also enter the date for the onset of the problem, age affected, date last experienced problem, and date problem was resolved, if appropriate. This slide shows an example of the Diagnosis Code Select screen that will appear when a user does a lookup from the Family History Problem screen. From here, the appropriate diagnosis code set, including ICD-9, ICD-10, and SNOMED codes, can be selected and returned to the Family Member History Problem screen. Negative family history information, which appears in the bottom half of the structured family history grid, is entered much the same as information for the individual family members. Remember, negative family history is for problems that the family does not have showing up in their history. For example, if a family has no history of hypertension, then hypertension would be added under negative family history. In regard to entering general family history, a user would need to click on Negative Family History from the main Family History screen, click on either the New or Edit buttons, enter a problem or select a problem by performing an HLI lookup, enter the date and last date of the problem, and then click OK or the Save and Add New button. New letter codes have been added that relate to the History tab as well. First, we have the Family History letter code with a number of parameters shown here. Use of the letter code will return family information for a particular problem as text or as a problem code, as well as return information related to a specific family member. For Meaningful Use Stage 2, you must be able to record family history for first-degree relatives as structured data. In addition, other parameters related to first-degree family members or the family member's sex can be used to filter information and brought into a letter or note. In the example highlighted in red, use of the Family History letter code can return a list of the patient's first-degree male family members with coronary heart disease. These letter codes can be used in conditional logic statements within progress note templates. If there are no results that meet the criteria indicated in the letter code will return nothing. However, if the problem or problem code parameter is used to match a global negative family history, the letter code will return no family history of problem for whatever problem was tested for. Another enhancement for Release 11.0 is the addition of a series of new insert codes that relate specifically to the family history note. These include the IFH2 and IFH3 insert codes. These insert codes will insert all or a subset of the recorded family history, including negative family histories, specific negative family histories, and specific pertinent positives, which we saw in the family grid screen discussed earlier. The format in which information is inserted into a progress note from an IFH2 code is displayed here with an example highlighted in red. Unlike the IFH2 code, the IFH3 insert code inserts specific pertinent positive problems and ignores items entered in the No Family History Of section of the grid. In addition to these insert codes, a regular dot code has also been added to version 11.0. The FH code has been added to provide the ability to enter structured family history information into a progress note that will then push to the Family tab when the note is saved. A note to point out when using the FH dot code is if multiple family members of the same type exist. For example, the patient has 3 sisters. Enter them as they display on the grid view of the family history screen. For example, Sister 1, Sister 2, and Sister 3. Also, a new cross-reference setting in the ppart.ini file called familymember.ini allows you to specify naming preferences, for instance, mother, mom, etc., and also allows you to determine the sort order of the family members in the grid. For more information on editing this file, please see the Practice Partner 11.0 Upgrade and Configuration Guide.
Text me the number. Take a number real quick.
Now that you've had a chance to view the material, would you like to take a quiz to see what you have learned? Click the button below to take the quiz, or click the video